The Electoral Commission says it wants to postpone by-elections that are scheduled for the end of this month and in February. They're now approaching the Electoral Court to ask for permission for those elections to be postponed. Masego Shaburi is the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer. Mr. Shaburi, good afternoon to you. You've been able to hold by-elections, we recall, at the end of last year. You were able to hold by-elections during the pandemic. Why are you now asking a court to postpone these by-elections?
Thanks, Stephen. It has always been the position of the Commission that it is constrained from holding safe, free and fair elections under conditions other than alert level 1. The by-elections that we held in November and December were under alert level 1 with much more relaxed regulations. With the country reverting to alert level 3 in December, the regulations have now changed. They proscribe social gatherings. They prohibit gatherings at political events. They also limit the free movement of persons in that there is an extant curfew between 2100 hours and 600 hours in the morning. Again, in the context of increasing cases, the safety of voters and that of electoral staff become paramount. And it's a view of the Commission that while we extend the right to representation, we should do so in a manner that does not exacerbate an already tenuous public health situation.
Is your concern that it's not possible to vote safely, in other words, to have queues of people voting, or is it your view that it's not possible to allow political parties to campaign safely and that the curfew is too onerous a restriction on political parties?
It is a combination of factors. First is that no social gatherings are permitted anywhere in the country and also in district that has been designated as hotspot areas. Again, with the heightened knowledge on the part of the South African population on how the disease is spread, we foresee that there may be lower than expected turnout because people may think that coming to voting station will be exposing themselves to contracting the virus. Again, as I said, when we went to court last year in March, we had argued that under any other level, alert level, we will not be able to ensure that those by-elections contested where there's a limit on the free movement of persons, where there's limit on the free gatherings of persons, where there's a limit on political activity, the Commission is constrained from ensuring that those by-elections will pass the scrutiny of freeness and fairness.
You go to the Electoral Court, you make an application, that's the way the system works. Are you expecting anyone to argue against you? I would imagine any political party that feels that it may be in a position to win one of the seats in the by-elections, one of the wards on offer in the by-elections, might feel hard done by. They will have already done some of their campaigning.
Preceding our approach to the Electoral Court, we convened a National Party Liaison Committee. That is a committee representative of all parties that have representation at the National Assembly. And all parties were in agreement that they accept the rationale for postponing the by-elections, but they also support our approach to the Electoral Court to postpone those by-elections. We have also written to members of the executive, i.e., MECs responsible for local government and the minister responsible for cooperative governance, to advance the reason why we are approaching the Electoral Court to ask for postponements. Political parties have certainly supported our approach to the court, and any interested party may respond by way of papers when the matter sits before the Electoral Court. Over and above our consultation, we have also cited all persons that have an interest in the by-election so that they can help the court to arrive at a just determination by advancing reasons why circumstances permit for by-elections to go ahead.
Mr. Shaburi, the obvious question I have to ask you next is that we are supposed to have local government elections this year. Now, there was a time when some people were talking about some kind of delay or postponement there, which, as I understand it, just isn't possible. It would be unconstitutional to allow that. And yet, we're still in the hands of the pandemic. We don't know what will happen, and the clock is ticking. We have until November.
That is true, Stephen. Our reading of the Constitution is that there is an almost never again impulse in that the Constitution and the law sets the limit for a term, and you can't vary the date of the election beyond the constitutionally determined ceiling date without perceptions that you are extending the stay of incumbents in position in a manner that is other than constitutional. We have begun consultations with political parties. We are looking at all avenues to see whether there is a basis on which, firstly, we are able to undertake elections this year in the pandemic. And if we come to a conclusion that it is not possible, what are the lawful avenues that we may have recourse to ensure that the date is varied? The Commission is yet to make a determination on the factor, but it is a matter that we are seized with. Also considering that the fairness and freeness of an election cannot only be judged by activities on voting day. There are a number of other preceding activities that must still meet that standard of freeness. For an example, can elections be free and fair if voter registration happened in the midst of a pandemic and rising cases of infections? Those are the questions that we need to respond to and answer as the Electoral Commission before we arrive at a position of what it is that we're going to do to ensure that these elections this year take place in conditions of safety and that they are both free and fair.
Incredibly difficult situation that you face. One of the key questions that you might have to sort of examine in deciding whether or not local elections can go ahead later in the year, is whether there have been any cases of transmission of the virus while people have been voting. And you've already got two sets of by-elections that you can look at. Are you aware of any cases of transmission of the virus while people were voting in the by-elections you were able to have last year?
As we speak now, no, Stephen, we have not been made aware of any instances where electoral activities turned out to be spreaders of the virus.
Mr. Shaburi, thanks very much indeed. The Deputy Chief Electoral Officer at the Electoral Commission, the IEC.